when I applied for a job, it was very easy in comparison to Germany. And in Germany, you have this big map and you have to put your picture in there, your resume, something else, and a letter, like many, many things, and you put it neatly into a map. And when you go for an interview, you wear almost a suit, even though you just apply for a cashier position. In Canada, it's very easy. You just print out your resume and you have one interview and then you get hired or you don't get hired. I was very surprised about that. How open the highways are. When we came here the first time, I thought, where did we land? Because it's always city, nothing, city. And in Germany, it's not that way. There's always something around you, and it was a little bit scary. Like, I don't want to live in the country. The cold was very surprising. The heat was very surprising. In summer, it's extremely, like, it's very hot, and it's in winter, it's very cold.
I find the Canadian way of life is the more simplistic and easygoing. I experience it as very pleasant. Whereas for me in Germany, it was more of a hassle. It's a go thing. But I think Manitoba might be a bit laid back too. But I like the province, so I like a little bit of being laid back. There is, it's just the pleasant people that I enjoy. It's not a fast pace, like I said. There's more opportunities for myself and for my children to do something in their lives. They might study in Vancouver, they might study in Toronto. They have access to education in a better way than I had in Germany. They have more opportunities, and I like that aspect, especially about that. And even I have opportunity to go to university, which I wouldn't have necessarily in Germany.
Yeah, Canadians are very super polite, never offend anybody, and always apologize for everything that might be offending. So I think it's funny. But it's nice too, like, yeah.
Well, school system is different, that's for sure. It wasn't surprising because we've been here in 2005 just to take a look and to make sure that we want to move here. It's different, but I like it more. Because it gives us more chance to work full-time, me as a mother, because the schools are from 9 to 4, so I can work. And everything else, I have more chances to have a better job here, actually, yes. Without looking at where you come from and have to work 3 times harder than anybody else.
You know, the snowstorms. That's always very funny. They have +10 in Germany right now, and we have minus, I guess, 35 right now. That's a big difference. Well, my friend from Germany, she visited me in 2010, I think, or 2011, and she was very surprised about the size of the cars. Even like normal-sized cars that we call normal-sized are way bigger than you would see it in Europe. The grocery stores are huge. When I tell them you can buy those party packs of chips, they always look at me funny, and like just the sizes of the things that you can buy here, it's insane.
I would say that, the very friendly nature of people, very welcoming, I'm not to say not judging, people, if you have an accent, if you don't know how to say something, people try to help you instead of laugh about that you don't know how to say certain things. People have, most of the people in the community have a Christian background, go to church, and all the values that flow out of that, we find it, we find it's important to us, and it seems like it's easy to maintain in this community.
Kanada hat einen großen Unterschied im Bildungswesen gegenüber Deutschland. Die Regierung Kanadas erlaubt Homeschool. Und Eltern, die ihre Kinder bewusst erziehen möchten und bewusste Werte vermitteln wollen, die haben hier tatsächlich bessere Möglichkeiten. Sie müssen sich eintragen lassen. Sie werden also registriert von der Regierung, dass man Homeschool macht. Nebenbei bemerkt, wir haben 4 Kinder und eine Tochter, die wir homeschoolen. Die beiden anderen Kinder sind in der Schule und der 4. ist im Kindergarten. Ja, und hier sehen wir schon einen Vorteil, dass wir eben unsere Werte so vermitteln können, wie wir das wollen.
When my relatives call me, they always want me to tell them that 2-hour story of something that is different from Germany, but the longer you live here, the less you notice the differences, because you start forgetting more about Germany and you see this as the norm, as Canada and how you live here. And so you don't really know how to compare those two things anymore, so all of the conversations become less frequent that way. I more ask them about themselves, but I don't really know what to tell them about here. You know, I go to work and it's the same, and the weather is weird, but yeah.
I had to get used to wait for everything. It takes a little bit longer. Well, I saw the good thing in this, but because everything is just slower, quieter, nicer. But yeah, I had to get used to it. To wait for everything.
For my parents, it's very important to speak German in the family. They encourage us to talk English anywhere else and to have Canadian friends, but in the family, except when my husband is there because he's Canadian, it's mostly, it's all German. But besides that,
Man kann in der Kirche, da darf man wirklich die Hände falten oder auch hochheben und darf am Sonntag zum Gottesdienst gehen. Aber wenn du hier ein Lehrer bist, noch im öffentlichen Schulwesen, dann wirst du schon sehr klar darauf hingewiesen, dass diese Informationen aus der Bibel, dass die zu Hause bleiben.
What I think is uniquely Canadian, I don't know, I've been maybe to 14, 15 different countries. I've been on vacation to Africa, all over Europe, born in Russia, lived in both parts of Russia, Asian and European part of Russia, and stuff like that. The one thing that I think uniquely Canadian, or, I mean, again, my experience in Canada is Southern Manitoba and Manitoba in general. I've been to different provinces, but I lived here. So my Canadian experience is uniquely a Manitoba experience, a Southern Manitoba experience. As I mentioned before, the friendly nature of the people and the helping nature of the people around. Like, I remember probably 4 years ago, our neighbors, they went on holidays to Texas in wintertime. And there was a heavy storm in December, I believe, or maybe even January. And our neighbors called us from Texas to tell us that the snowblower is in their garage, that we should go get that snowblower to clean our driveway because they saw on the news that there was a snowstorm and they knew that we did not have a snowblower at that time. So, I don't know, I would be very challenged to believe that, well, at least in my personal experience, in the countries I've been to, or the countries at least where I lived, that would not be the case at all whatsoever. That your neighbors would care to that extent about you that they would call you from a different country that they're holidaying in to let you borrow their snowblower, and they tell you where the key to their house is hidden outside over the phone, so you can go grab a snowblower and clean your driveway. People were friendly and more welcoming than I expected they actually would be. Other than that, I don't know. As far as geographically, I mean, we moved here in '98, so internet was just about, and there's books and everything else that you could read about Canada and Manitoba, so it wasn't a surprise. We were not expecting to find mountains here or nothing like that, or bears roaming in your backyard. So we educated ourselves before coming here as far as what the country is and stuff like that.
Germany has a program that has several school forms, and they give you a certain level of education. There is Hauptschule, there is Realschule, there is Gymnasium. With Gymnasium, you have the ability to go to the university. One of the benefits in Germany would be free education. I think that's a good point they have there. For me, I just finished Realschule. That means it's a medium education. So to qualify for university, and I would have to finish another 2-3 years of gymnasium. Beyond that, there is high competition in almost every aspect of education. So that makes it a bit more difficult. You can be good, but you're maybe not good enough yet. In Canada, I find it's easy to get to the university. You qualify in terms of English language ability. You take some basic courses. You see if you're capable of being good or meet the expected qualification, and then you proceed from there. And then there's simply a bigger demand for good learners, I guess, good qualified people, and the opportunity to go to the university and the medical field is, the bar might be not as high. I would just say it this way. So that's why it's easier to access and more attractive.
It's just, I guess, the whole the schooling system we found to be very good as far as integration. As far as academically, I think it's, in my experience at least, I haven't gone to school here, but my kids and my sister that have gone to school here, I would say academically certain, factual thing, like physics and math, I find them to be slightly weaker here than they were in Germany, because I know my sister, at one point in time, they moved back and she had to be put back 2 grades versus, she finished grade 10 here, but she could barely start grade 9 math in Germany because, for example, that's how much slower it was. However, often in life, complicated math matters less versus human interaction and human connection and being part of the group. For example, in Germany, schools are very segregated in different levels. You have the basic high school, you have the advanced high school, and then you have the gymnasium. It's based on your academical achievement and stuff like that. So there's more segregation, sort of people, winners versus losers, so to speak. And that creates, more of I would say more of a hypocritical culture, as well as people with disabilities are put in a completely different segregated school, which in my view is absolutely horrendous. It is, I think there's almost the seeds from a Third Reich left over somehow yet, because I think that's absolutely horrendous, and I disagree heavily with that. I think in our high schools here in Canada, where it's one high school, so everybody goes in there, from weaker students to stronger students, including people with disabilities, so that the future business owners and leaders that went through the high school can grow up with all kinds of different people and have the humility and understanding of all the challenges that we as humans have, versus in Germany, it's such a segregation that people that go to a gymnasium hardly get to see people with disability or people maybe who are not as advanced in school as they are. So it creates more of a segregated society. When people grow up and become business owners, they are not as forgiving or as kind-hearted or gentle-hearted as maybe some people that would go through the high school system that we have here. So I would say, in generally, I very much like our Canadian school system, or at least in Manitoba, that's the one I know.
My wife is Kenyan, so I am German. We are already a kind of a multicultural family. My two oldest ones speak German and visit Germany because my father still lives there. They like that part of it. They don't want to forget. So once in a while we try to speak to them in German, but somehow happens we speak all the time, I think, English. Because it's my wife's first language, almost first language, and my language of choice. And yeah, how much can they be Germans? I get just they can be half Germans only now, because they're half Kenyans too.
Ich will das mit einem Beispiel erklären. Ich komme aus der ehemaligen DDR, German Democratic Republic. Deutschland war getrennt in Ost und West. Der Osten war praktisch das sozialistische Lager und der Westen war das kapitalistische Lager. Im Osten gab es auch, der Osten war gewissermaßen so wie Russland auch, antigöttlich, atheistisch. Es sollte kein Gott geben. Es gab den Slogan, ohne Gott und Sonnenschein bringen wir die Ernte ein. Und also ohne Gott und Sonnenschein die Ernte einzubringen, das ist ein schwieriges Unterfangen. Da gibt es nur Katastrophen. Es gab zwei Figuren, die sich in der damaligen DDR sehr erfolgreich durchgesetzt haben. Das war eins, der Weihnachtsmann, der Santa Claus. Die Kinder teilweise wussten nicht, worum es eigentlich noch geht. Was steht hinter Weihnachtsmann? Hinter Weihnachtsmann stehen Geschenke. Dass es eigentlich um die Geburt Jesu Christi ging, das wussten die Kinder nicht. Dann gab es den Freund von Santa Claus, vom Weihnachtsmann, das war der Osterhase. Ja, wer ist der Osterhase? Ja, der bringt Ostereier und so. Es ging eigentlich um die Kreuzigung Jesu. Und diese beiden Sachen, die ich kennengelernt habe in der DDR, die für mich eben ja, das war ein Teil der DDR-Geschichte waren, diese gleichen Dinge sehe ich hier in Kanada wieder. Santa Claus, Osterhase und in allen öffentlichen Bereichen sollte man sich absolut zurückhalten, über biblische Werte zu sprechen. Und das ist für mich so eine Ähnlichkeit, die ist für mich verblüffend. Ich bin jetzt 51 Jahre, bin jetzt kein 12-jähriger Junge mehr und sage irgendwelche Sachen, die ich noch gar nicht verstehe. Ich habe das erlebt. Ich komme aus der ehemaligen DDR. Ich habe es erlebt. Und ich erlebe das jetzt hier wieder. Das war etwas sehr Überraschendes.
Personally, I would think Canadians might be a bit superficial because they don't open up easier as Germans might, but I find Germans being more direct people. Canadians beat about the bush, and sometimes I have a hard time to figure out what they actually mean. So their approach to interact is a bit polite. They excuse themselves a lot. I find it's very funny, even for things that are no mistakes or just common sense. And I think I'm getting there too already. That I apologize, I excuse myself for something good or right. That's part of becoming Canadian. being influenced by the culture.
Es gab dieses Bill 18. Wenn man sich an die Bibel als Wertmaßstab hält und das kanadische Wertsystem basiert ja eigentlich auf der Bibel, ja, dann ist das natürlich, wenn man hinter die Kulissen guckt, was Bill 10 aussagt. Und wie gesagt, nicht nur das, was vordergründig sichtbar ist bei Bill 18. Ja, da geht es um dem entgegenzuwirken, dass Kinder ausgegrenzt werden. Ja, und dass eben Kinder ausgegrenzt werden. Natürlich bin ich dagegen. Ich bin dagegen, wenn Menschen ausgegrenzt werden, nicht? Aber ja, bei Bill 18, wenn man sich damit beschäftigt, dann sieht man, es gibt da doch Einzelheiten und Details, die man schon auch genauer unter die Lupe nehmen kann und dann durchaus unterschiedlicher Meinung sein kann, nicht? Und das ist Schulsystem, was ich auch aus Deutschland so auch kenne, auch Sexualkunde kann man auch geteilter Meinung sein, unterschiedlicher Meinung sein, wie Sexualkunde zu vermitteln ist. Wir haben bisher eigentlich an den Schulen, wo unsere Kinder unterrichtet haben, wir haben bisher, das kann ich so sagen, wir haben da noch gute Erfahrungen. Bisher also keine schlechten Erfahrungen gemacht. Wobei, ich weiß nicht, ob das bekannt ist, was ich so höre, ist, dass Winkler so ein bisschen das Jerusalem von Kanada ist. Winkler ist auch auf jeden Fall ein etwas heiligeres Pflaster als woanders, ja, und hier wird manches anders gehandhabt wohl als in anderen Teilen von Kanada.